Stir fry is one of the world's oldest and best ways to cook. And now, it's one of the most contemporary and up-to-date things to do in the kitchen. You're about to learn the easiest way to make the fluffiest rice you'll ever taste. Beef with sweet mixed peppers, a popular shrimp dish called Coral and Jade. Helen Chen is the author of the best-selling cookbook Chinese Home Cooking, is an internationally known cooking teacher and Chinese chef, and the president of Joyce Chen Products. And now, here's Helen Chen to show you everything you need to know about stir fry.
Hello, I'm Helen Chen, and welcome to my kitchen. I'm going to show you how to stir fry the quick and easy way using supermarket ingredients, and you can make dishes that are economical, delicious, and nutritious for you and your family. So, stay tuned, and I hope you'll enjoy it. Well, the first thing we're going to do is make rice. And rice is the staff of life to the Chinese. So being able to make good rice is very important. In fact, a lot of people always come to me and say, how do the Chinese make this wonderful, fluffy, dry rice? Well, it's easy, and I'll show you how to do it. First is you have to use the right kind of rice. We use a long grain rice. Long grain rice will give you nice, fluffy rice. In a second, we just use plain water, no butter, no salt, no sugar, no oil of any kind. And by the way, you always make good rice if you do not follow the directions on the package. Now, we'll start off by showing you a very, very interesting old Chinese cooking utensil called a steam pot. And although this is specially designed to make a chicken dish, we're going to steam rice. And it will make rice perfectly every time, foolproof. You never have to stir it. You never have to watch it. It won't burn. It won't overcook. Perfect every time. Now this is called the steam pot. And you'll notice its design is an earthenware pot, and it has in the middle a large, like a chimney, with a hole in the center. And if we turn the pot around, you'll see that it actually leads to the bottom, where steam will enter into the pot and cook the rice. So let's start and show you how simple it is to do. We're going to take 2 cups of long grain rice. And if you like to wash your rice the way the Chinese do, you can do that before adding it in, or you can just put the rice in without washing it. We're going to add to 2 cups of raw rice 2 1/4 cups of water. Now be sure that all the grains of rice are submerged and the rice is nice and level. Now we cover the steam pot, and we're going to put this into a stock pot. Now the stock pot already has a little bit of water in here, but we put our steam pot into a stock pot that has water in it. Now the water level should come just to the bottom of those handles that you saw, so we'll add a little bit more water to this. There we go. Now we cover the stock pot as well. It's almost like double cooking in a way, because we've got a pot within a pot. We turn the heat up to a medium-high, bring it to a boil, and then reduce the heat so that we maintain a slow boil for about 30 to 40 minutes. And the rice will be absolutely perfect. You never have to look at it. You never have to check it. You never have to worry about it. Now, since this does take 30 to 40 minutes, we're going to show you some rice that is already prepared so you can see how beautiful it is. This is the rice. Do you see how lovely that is? It's light and fluffy. Now we take a pair of chopsticks. Because the rice has never been stirred while it's cooking, it's very compact. 2 cups of raw rice will give about 5 cups of cooked rice. So we take bamboo chopsticks, or you can use a bamboo rice paddle, and just moisten it with some plain water so that the grains don't stick. And look how fluffy that is. Beautiful Chinese restaurant-style rice. Perfect every time. We're going to make beef with sweet mixed peppers. This is a very easy dish that uses the natural colors of the vegetables to give it a really lovely, appealing look. And before we actually start preparing the dish itself, I want to show you some important cutting techniques and the tools that you'll need in the Chinese kitchen. First is the knife. And I start with a knife because the cutting knife is actually, I feel, one of the more important tools, because unless you can cut the food, you can't stir fry. Food is cut so that it will cook evenly and will look attractive on the table. This is a Chinese knife. Many people call it a cleaver. I like to call it a knife because it's specially designed for cutting and slicing and dicing. It is not a heavy chopping knife, so do not use it for cutting up bones. The knife can be either in a carbon steel or stainless steel, the way this one is, and this has a full tang handle, so it's really comfortable to hold. Now the Chinese knife, because of its rectangular size, tends to be heavier in the front, and so we hold it a different way. And the proper way to hold the knife is actually at the bolster, which is sort of the neck of the knife where it attaches to the handle. And your hand goes right around there so that your forefinger is actually on one side of the blade and your thumb on the other. And in this way, you're almost pinching that part of the knife. And because your hand is further forward, it gives you far more control of the knife itself, and it doesn't feel as awkward. As with any new tool, you really should take the time to practice and cut very slowly so that you will feel more comfortable with this new type of knife. Now, what we're going to start out with is the peppers. And I like to use, I call this a sweet mixed pepper because we like to have those wonderful natural colors. And here's something that is a wonderful, neat trick to learn. The peppers are round and they're hollow, so we first always wash the peppers before you cut them so that it doesn't accumulate a lot of water and then it'll be a lot of splattering when you cook. The second is, how do we make a round, hollow vegetable into one that's flat and easy to cut? And here's the trick. Now, holding your knife the proper way, remember, pinch that blade. We're going to cut both ends off of the pepper, like this. And then we take the knife and cut down one side and cut out the core of the pepper from the inside. And you see how neat and simple that is. There's hardly any waste at all. And voila, what we've got is a flat vegetable. Now, we take this and we're going to be cutting it into chunks. It's very simple to make something like this into squares, and I prefer to make a more attractive look by cutting them into irregular shape chunks. And you notice I use a diagonal cut, and I cut the pieces like this. Now, with this type of shape that we have now, this flat pepper, you can also cut into julienne or matchstick shreds. And even though we're not using it in this recipe, look how easy it is now to do to make matchstick shapes out of these peppers. It's a wonderful, wonderful technique. Now we finish cutting, and don't waste the ends. Chinese cooking, we don't waste food. And save all the pieces, and so there's very, very little waste at all. Now we have here already cut up a green pepper and a yellow pepper, and you'll see already some of the wonderful colors that are appearing out of this dish. Now we're going to start by cutting the meat. Now the type of cut of meat that we're using is flank steak. And I prefer to use flank steak than any other cut of beef because it's very low in fat. And if you even take a look at this piece, you'll see how very little fat there is. And in fact, there's so little fat that it tends to cook up very dry and stringy, and a lot of people don't like it. But if you're watching your cholesterol, this is an excellent cut of beef to use. And there's very, very little waste. Now, to start, you take a look at the flank steak. The grain of the meat always runs the length of the meat. It's just like wood. If you follow the grain, you see it running straight across. The first thing you do, if there is any excess fat, trim off any visible fat. And this has been very nicely trimmed already by the butcher. Then we take our knife and we're going to cut along the grain into strips that are about 1.5 to 2 inches across. See how simple that is. And by the way, using a sharp knife is very, very important because a sharp knife cuts more cleanly and more securely, and so you'll always be comfortable and you rarely cut yourself. Most people have accidents in the kitchen with knives that are too dull. Now that the meat is cut into strips, and you'll see the strips like this, we're going to take the strip and cut across the grain. Now we're cutting across the grain into thin slices that are about 1/8 to 1/4 inch in thickness. Now here you'll notice a few techniques that I want to bring to your attention. The first is that when we cut the Chinese style, we cut strictly on a push stroke. So we push, but we don't pull back. The second is that the left hand, of course, is very important. You never put your left hand flat in this manner, because this way you're very apt to probably nick your fingertips. What you do is hold your left hand in a position where it's very comfortable and relaxed. And when your hands are relaxed, you notice that the tip of the fingers lie slightly behind and under your knuckles. When in that position and you're cutting with a knife, the wide flat blade of the knife may touch slightly your knuckles. And if your fingertips are behind your knuckles, you can never cut yourself. It's very important, of course, to never raise the blade over your knuckles. And this way you can always use your left hand as a guide. Now, don't try to cut fast. Take your time. These are all techniques that are learned. And like driving a car, you have to take your time, do it slowly, and practice. You'll notice, too, that this meat has not been frozen. Very often, some chefs will recommend that the beef be slightly frozen so that it will cut very, very thin. And you'll notice that it's not frozen because I don't want to have really thin cuts of beef. I feel that beef that is paper thin tends to dry out when it's cooking. So I like to have a little texture, and the texture is so that the food will taste better and the meat won't dry out while it's cooking. So be sure that we have at least 1/8 of an inch. Now this is a lot of meat, and we don't need to use the whole amount. We'll just use between 3/4 and 1 pound of beef. And here's another part that's wonderful about Chinese cooking, is that we use meat as a condiment, not as a main ingredient. We don't have to have a lot of meat to use. What we use low-fat cuts, very lean, and we use a small amount. What is more important, really, are the vegetables. Now we're going to season the beef. Now, when we're ready to season the beef, this will need 4 different ingredients. The first, we're adding in 3 tablespoons of soy sauce. And I want to explain something about soy sauce because it's probably one of the most used but least understood ingredient. There are 2 different kinds of soy sauces generally, Japanese and Chinese style. And what we use for Chinese cooking is Chinese soy sauce. So when you're in the market, look for Chinese soy sauce. It also comes in a light and dark variety that refers to the thickness of the soy. And for a beef dish where we want more color and a darker look, we would use the dark soy sauce. We're going to add, too, 1 tablespoon of cornstarch. And here's an ingredient that everybody knows that's used in Chinese cooking, but they rarely understand why. Cornstarch is always added to raw meat and seafood to coat it so that when it's cooking it doesn't dry out. This is one of the reasons why with Chinese food, those stir-fried chicken and seafood, scallops, all those things always come out very tender and juicy because we use a light coating of cornstarch. And because cornstarch coats evenly and it cooks very quickly, well, you'll find that it thickens on contact so that you don't overcook your food either. And then we're going to add in a tablespoon of dry sherry. I actually like to use dry sherry, and it can be almost any brand of pale dry sherry in the market, because I find that many rice wines in Chinese grocery stores are actually salted, and we don't need to add excess or unwanted or hidden salt into our food. And then we have 1 teaspoon of granulated sugar. Now we just stir this up, and you'll notice I'm using a pair of chopsticks. You can use a spoon if you like, but chopsticks are wonderful cooking utensils and stirring utensils. And we put this aside. We're also going to be using 1 can of bamboo shoots. And these bamboo shoots are already sliced, so you don't have to cut them. Sometimes they have a rather earthy aroma to them, which we really like in these dishes. But if it does have a tinny smell, sometimes people find that they don't like it. So what you can do is just plunge them into boiling water, drain them, and then rinse them with cold water, and that often will remove some of that tinny taste. And we're also going to be using ginger root. Now with Chinese cooking, it's very important to always use fresh ginger root. And here's a piece of ginger root. It is actually a rhizome. It's very, very fibrous. And whenever you're cooking Chinese style, never substitute with powdered ginger. It is not the same taste and will not give the same flavor at all. So always use fresh ginger root. And for this dish, we need 1 slice. And a slice means it's about 1/8 of an inch thick and perhaps the size of a quarter or half a dollar. And that's all we need. Now, before we actually start cooking, I want to talk a little bit about a pan because this is very, very important. The pan that I have here is a 12-inch diameter stir-fry pan with a flat bottom and a non-stick interior. And it also has a Western-style handle, which I like because you can really handle it and manipulate it much better. And you'll notice it has a flat bottom, a nice wide flat bottom, so it sits very securely on the stove. Now, with any non-stick piece of cookware, we actually do not wish to preheat it because it tends to damage the non-stick coating. So what I would do instead is we're going to add oil to the pan, and we will start by cooking the peppers. And we will start with a cold pan and cold oil. Now, before I put in the oil, let me tell you something about oil because it's always a question everyone asks. What kind of oil is best for stir frying? Most people know that peanut oil is often used because it can take the high temperature of stir frying, but the problem there is it tends to be a very heavy tasting oil and a heavy feeling oil, so dishes tend to be kind of oily looking and tasting. I prefer to use canola oil, which I have here. Canola oil is very, very low in saturated fats. It can take the high heat of stir frying, and the other thing is that it has no taste of its own. So we use about 2 tablespoons and put that right into the pan. And I have the pan now. I'm going to turn it up to a medium-high. Now the first thing we're going to do is actually not to cook the meat, but to cook the vegetables. The Chinese way of cooking is that we sequence the cooking. Not everything goes in at one time because if it did, the vegetables and the beef would not cook at the same time. So one would be overcooked and the other would be undercooked. So we cook the vegetable first. Now, also, it's very hard to tell when is the oil ready. You know, if you look around and you wonder if you see it swirling, simple way, take your spatula, tap it into the meat that we have mixed here, and put it into the oil. See that sizzling? That means the oil is ready. If there's no sizzling, the oil isn't ready. Now put in the vegetables, and put it in very low so you don't splatter. Ah, that wonderful sound. That sound we call ta, and that's sort of this explosive stir-fry sound that's very joyous. My mother used to always say, when you're tall like this, get the cats and dogs out of the kitchen because they'll get frightened. Now we stir this only for about 1 minute. Remember, stir-frying is very quick. Don't want to overcook any of your vegetables because we want to maintain the wonderful color, the texture, and the vitamins and minerals. Now we remove the peppers onto a flat platter. Now it's important that when you remove the vegetables, keep as much oil behind as you can so you're not putting in excess oil into the food. And the other is be sure the vegetables are on a flat platter. This way they won't overcook even while they're just sitting there. Now we're going to add a little bit more oil because we're ready to cook the beef. Add the ginger and take your spatula and just swirl that ginger around because we're going to make it aromatic and a wonderful smell. If you see a slight burning, it isn't the oil that's burning, but a little bit of the oil had dripped onto the burner, so don't be concerned about that. Now, the beef should be stirred just before we add it in. And don't marinate it too long at all. It's not good for the meat. There's that wonderful sound again. Now we're going to stir, and cornstarch sometimes has a nasty habit of sticking a little bit. If the heat is too high, just lower the heat. You notice I lowered it a little bit because the pan is very, very efficient. We add about 1 tablespoon of water to the pan. Now, you may wonder, why is she adding in water? And I add water in because what it does is it makes gravy, and at the same time, it dissolves any cornstarch that may be sticking to the pan so that you do not add any more oil at this time. The amount of oil we have in this whole dish is approximately 2 tablespoons. You could probably even make a dish with 3 tablespoons if you have a good nonstick pan. Add in the bamboo shoots. And remember to drain those bamboo shoots before you put them in. Continue stirring. We see that wonderful color. The soy sauce has given a deep, rich color to this dish. And this is important because beef, when it's cooked, has kind of a gray tone to it, so it needs to have the dark color of the soy sauce. And now the vegetables go right back in, and you can see the dish really taking shape. It is well balanced, it's very attractive, nothing is overcooked, nothing's undercooked. A few stirs, and the dish is done. It's that easy. Now you can put it right back on the serving platter that we used to hold the peppers. Now look how quick and easy that was to prepare. It's a nutritious, one-dish meal, has vegetables and meat. It's very attractive, and I would serve this with steamed rice. That would be the nice way, steamed white rice or brown rice, or even egg noodles if you wish. But it really is a dish that you'd be very proud of serving. Coral and Jade. This is a wonderful shrimp and pea pod dish, and the name was coined by my mother, who thought the shrimp looked like coral and the peas looked like bottle green imperial jade. It's very, very easy to prepare. First thing, we're going to need 1 pound of large or medium shrimp. And peel the shrimp. It's very simple to do. Just use your fingers and peel off all the shell, including the portion right over the tail. Now we're going to devein. Deveining is basically taking away the intestinal vein. And I like to use these scissors, which were my mother's favorite scissors to use. And simply take the scissors. The vein lies along the back side, the back curve of the shrimp. Cut along there, and sometimes you'll see a dark vein. Sometimes it will be clear, like this one is. Looks like the shrimp didn't have very much for lunch. Now, going to add that right to the bowl where I have some other shrimp, and we're going to get ready to season it. Now the seasoning is very simple, but it does need some ginger, and we're going to use a little different ginger, not a slice of ginger, but we're going to use grated ginger. Now ginger is especially wonderful for seafood because it helps mask some of that fishy aroma, so it makes it taste good, but we don't want to use so much ginger that we just taste the ginger. This is a ginger grater. And what the ginger grater does is that it takes the pulp from this very fibrous root and it leaves the fibers behind. So you peel the ginger. Now the rule of thumb is that if you're going to use the ginger, you're going to eat it. Like minced ginger or grated ginger in a salad, we peel it. If you're not going to consume the ginger, you don't peel it, like we did when we did the beef. We did not peel the ginger. Run it back and forth, the porcelain teeth of the ginger grater. And you'll see what's happening is that we have all this ginger pulp and ginger juice that is appearing. But look at all the string that's left behind. We'll need about 1 teaspoon. Just keep on going back and forth until you have about 1 teaspoon of ginger pulp. We add that right to the shrimp. Now we're going to add in a teaspoon of sherry, and the sherry works the same way the ginger does. It kind of helps mask that fishy aroma, gives it a much sweeter taste. We're going to add 1 teaspoon cornstarch. Now a lot of you are probably getting used to hearing me say cornstarch because that cornstarch is used again here to keep the shrimp from drying out. And we're going to add in 1/4 teaspoon salt. This dish and some of the other ones you'll notice don't always have soy sauce. This is really the one that has no soy sauce in it. Many people think that all Chinese dishes have soy. This doesn't. And if you're on a very low sodium restricted diet, you can just leave out the salt completely. Set the shrimp aside. Then we're going to take a 1/4 pound snow peas and snap and string both ends. Don't use a knife, do it by hand. Put those aside, and then we'll also need water chestnuts, 1 can drained, ketchup, as I mentioned, which is 2 tablespoons, and some more salt. So let's start cooking. We're going to heat 1 tablespoon of oil into our wok. Now, the first thing we're going to do is to simply cook the snow peas. Snow peas are very delicate vegetable. They do not take a long time to cook. And by the way, please always use fresh snow peas. Never use frozen ones. When the oil heats up over a medium heat, we're going to stir fry them for only 30 seconds. This is so that they only turn a darker green. They take on a shine and sheen, but they will not scorch. So we'll let this pan heat up. And then we'll stir in the snow peas. You'll notice that in this case, we don't have a lot of sound. And that's because we don't want the oil to be too hot. If the pan is too hot, it will scorch the snow peas. So we let it heat up slowly while we're stirring the snow peas in. Then we're going to take our plate, and as soon as this cooks about 30 seconds, we remove it and put it on a plate. And that's about it. Very, very quick. Now we're going to cook the shrimp. And we add in 2 tablespoons of oil. And again, this is our canola oil. We turn the heat up to high this time. And then we're going to get ready to add in the shrimp. Because this has cornstarch, we want to be sure to stir the shrimp just before we add it in. The shrimp goes in, stir, and we cook this for about 1 to 2 minutes, just so they turn a little pink. You'll notice how they're turning pink right away. That gray color is turning to the bright pink. And then we're going to add in 2 tablespoons of ketchup. This is a surprise ingredient for a lot of people because they don't think of ketchup when they think of Chinese cooking, and water chestnuts. But the ketchup is going to give a very light, tomatoey taste to the dish and enhance the color, that coral color that we are looking for. You can see how beautifully bright and luscious that looks already. Now the snow peas are going to go back in. And we have an additional 1/4 teaspoon of salt that may be added in if you wish. Sprinkle that in. Stir it for another 30 seconds. And there we have it. It's always best with seafood to slightly undercook than to overcook, because the heat in the dish itself will continue to cook the shrimp even while it's on its way to the table. So be sure you don't overcook seafood, because then they get rubbery. And here's our finished coral and jade. Now that you've seen how quick and easy stir-fry cooking can really be, I hope you begin to incorporate some of these methods in your own cooking at home for easy, delicious, and really healthy food. In China, we don't say goodbye. We say 再见, which means till we meet again. So till we meet again, 再见.
And that's our introduction to Chinese stir-fry. Joyce Chen Incorporated makes a full line of Chinese cookware, utensils, and authentic sauces. We also offer a series of hardbound and paperbound cookbooks. These products are available wherever fine cookware is sold.